Well, another day and another major legislative accomplishment for Joe Biden, whose presidency in the last 2 months, as I told you about yesterday and the day before, has really turned itself around. The Inflation Reduction Act has now been signed into law by President Joe Biden. This bill, you might recall, barely passed the U.S. Senate 51-50. But, sir, how could it add up to 101 votes? Well, it was 50-50 with Kamala Harris as vice president, is the president of the Senate, casting the tie-breaking vote, 51. That was on August 7th. There were no Republican votes. We also saw the bill on Friday pass the U.S. House, not particularly widely, by a 220 to 207 margin. And Joe Biden has now signed the bill into law, and it is indeed major, major legislation. Let's take a look at what this bill does. It is a more than $430 billion package expected to reduce the deficit by over $300 billion over 10 years. It's expected to raise $737 billion in revenue over 10 years. And it includes $369 billion in investment money for climate and energy policy, $64 billion to extend the Affordable Care Act policy that reduces health insurance costs. So to be more honest, sometimes what we can maybe more accurately say is it slows down the rate of increase for health insurance costs. It includes, importantly, notably, a 15% corporate minimum tax for companies earning over $1 billion a year. This is a subject of much discussion, which is, for individuals, there has been an alternative minimum tax for a long time. And the concept of an alternative minimum tax is you make $1 million personally, you can use deductions and losses and all these different things to offset the full million in taxes, and you end up owing zero. In order to prevent that, something called the alternative minimum tax was established, which says that for a certain level of income, no matter how many deductions and losses you have to offset taxable income, you have to pay some minimum tax. We never had that for corporations. This bill puts that in place at a 15% rate. It also puts in place a 1% tax on stock buybacks done by large corporations. This was something that was a big deal during the pandemic, you may recall, when the Donald Trump coronavirus stimuli packages were enacted. Many corporations from the corporate side of it used the money they got to just buy back their own stock, raising its price. So this bill puts in place a 1% tax when you do stock buybacks. It will reduce drug prices for Medicare recipients. It expects to collect an additional $124 billion from increased IRS enforcement. So there's money in the bill, controversially so for many, to hire more IRS agents. The belief is that those additional agents are going to find tax cheats and recover $124 billion additional dollars. It includes tax credits to incentivize electric cars and electric HVAC systems, as well as other forms of cleaner technology. That's great. And it is expected to cut pollution by around 40% below the 2005 level by 2030. And it also puts in place a $2,000 a year out-of-pocket cap for Medicare recipients. Now, a few thoughts on this. Number one, is this a major legislative accomplishment for Joe Biden? Yes, it is. Will people vote based on this in November? It's not totally clear. We'll see what polling suggests over the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. Regardless of your political persuasion, there are things in this that are beneficial to most of the Americans in the country. For example, the $2,000 out-of-pocket cap for Medicare recipients. Medicare recipients are both Democrats and Republicans. In fact, it's a more conservative group. We know that every older cohort is slightly more conservative in the United States right now. Less pollution is good. Everybody benefits from less pollution, even if you're against green energy or whatever. There are things in here from which everyone benefits, regardless of political persuasion. Now, I want to take a sort of political overview of the Biden administration generally. My philosophy is, generally speaking, to judge presidents by what they do more than by what they don't do. Now, there are exceptions to that. For example, Donald Trump failed to do many things in terms of his COVID response. That is an area where you have an acute situation And it seems logical to say, look, all these other world leaders did these things. Trump failed to do that. That was an acute thing. But there are people who wrote to me over the last 12 to 24 hours about the Inflation Reduction Act saying, David, this is not good for Biden. What we need to be focusing on with Biden is he hasn't decriminalized marijuana. He hasn't forgiven all student debt. By the way, Joe Biden did forgive a bunch more student debt overnight, and we'll talk about that on the bonus show. Joe Biden did not do XYZ. Right. Trump also didn't decriminalize marijuana. Obama didn't decriminalize marijuana. It seems to me, if we're trying to evaluate a president's performance, none of them decriminalize marijuana, and it sort of zeroes out. I want cannabis decriminalized, to be clear, but it seems weird to me to react to what is clearly a major legislative accomplishment and to say, well, Biden hasn't done this other thing. I tend to judge presidents by the things that they do. And this is a very good thing. This should be screamed from the rooftops on media, social media, et cetera, by Democrats, and remind people you all benefit from things in this bill, even though every Republican in the Senate voted against it. So are there things Joe Biden has not done that I would like to see him do? Absolutely. Have I been critical of Joe Biden's lack of accomplishments? I have 100%. But this is an accomplishment. The jobs numbers are good. The economy is looking very good. Inflation's coming down. The PACT Act has been signed. For people that think this type of thing is good, he has gone and he approved a strike that killed al-Qaeda terrorist Ayman al-Zawahiri. Many of you have concerns about due process. I share those concerns. These are the things he has done. And it makes absolute and perfect sense to give him credit for those. And then compare to the alternative when it comes time, if he runs for re-election. What would this other person who is eventually going to be the Republican nominee, what would they have done in this situation? They wouldn't have passed the Inflation Reduction Act. They likely would not have passed the PACT Act. They wouldn't have done a lot of the things Joe Biden did that are good. And then we evaluate, well, is it worthy of re-election? That's a question for down the road. We don't even know if Biden is running. Our show has many sponsors. I love them all, but there's one product I use more than any other because I sit on it every day, and that's my Allform sofa in my living room. I've had this for 3 years now. It still looks amazing. Allform is the easiest way by far to design your own custom sofa because unlike with other companies, Allform lets you choose the fabric, the size, the shape, the color of the legs. If you're spending money on a sofa, you should be able to customize every single aspect of what you want. Get exactly what you need. Another unique thing about Allform, the furniture is modular. So you can buy one piece and add to it later, rearrange the pieces. This has so many advantages if you move, if you want to adapt the sofa to a new space. Shipping is always fast and free. You've got 100 days to send it back if you don't love it. They all come with a forever warranty, and you'll get 20% off at allform.com/Pacman. The link is down below.